trying to keep my priorities straight as I can. I mean, some weeks I have to, if I have to miss, I can't go every week, but I want to. God knows my heart. We're going to continue this morning. We're looking at a prophetic overview of the future. This will be part 2. Prophetic overview of the future. As I said last week, you won't agree with everything that I say. I know that. I think you'll agree with most of it. I think that I might not even agree with everything I say. I might have to change something later. As I was going into this deeper this week, studying, I really have figured out how little I do know. I'm getting that more revealed to me. But I do know a few things about it. I've studied it since I've been saved. At times more than others, studying prophecy. So I want to learn more. And I pray everything that I share is from the Bible, and I know it'll be what I believe at this point. So we're going to pick up where we left off last week. I will summarize quickly to where we got to this, where we are to today. Now, the way I believe it is, one thing I want to talk about in discussion later, for you that don't believe in the rapture of the church before the tribulation, that's one question I've got. We'll discuss it later, is when the timeline starts for events. So the way I believe, and the way some of y'all that do agree with me on this view, is that if the rapture took place right now, I know no reason the rapture could take place. If it did, the church is gone, then the tribulation starts. The tribulation being 7 years, the total tribulation. The first 3.5 mild, the second 3.5 very severe. A time that the world has never seen. Matthew 24, 25 talks about this, that the world has never seen. So, now one thing we're going to look at today is we're going to go into a detailed look of Daniel 9. Why all this is coming about. But Daniel's prophecy is very important. So we're going to go further than we went last week, but then we're going to take a real close look at Daniel now. I've spent a lot of time on that because I think it's really important. Where these 70 weeks come from. These 70 weeks, which is a total of 490 years, and the way it's divided up, each week is a period of 7 years. You got to remember that. We're going to go over that today. But so the rapture takes place, the church is gone, the tribulation starts, then we know the first 3.5 years mild, and then it goes on further into it. You know, the Antichrist is going to be in full, but by the middle of the tribulation, he's going to be in full. You're going to know who he is. We're going to go have the abomination of desolation, where he sets himself up in the temple. So we know the temple's got to be rebuilt at some point. Now, when that all starts, that's another discussion. There's a lot of discussion about that. So there's going to be a temple, okay? So he's going to set himself up in there and say, "I'm God." Now, some people believe he's going to have an idol built in there. So that's one view. Some people think in that temple he'll have an idol and say, "You're going to bow down to my idol, worship it," or he's going to be the one saying, "You're going to worship me." There's kind of a couple different views about that, but I think we all agree that there's going to be somebody saying, "I'm God," in there, and you're going to worship my God. And if you don't, you ain't going to buy or sell or do nothing, okay? You're going to take the mark, or you're not going to get it. We looked at that last week. So, let's pick up. We were in the tribulation, of the time of great tribulation. We looked at a lot of that. We looked at Revelation 13. We went through, I think, the whole chapter of Revelation 13. During this time, the announcement of the soon coming kingdom will be preached in all the world. They're going to know that Jesus is coming. Turn to Matthew 24:14. Matthew 24:14. As I already said, people that don't agree with the view that the church will still be here, you would be on the earth if that's the view you have during all this, okay? We talked about that last week. Matthew 24:14, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations." So the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So we know that God's going to have some witnesses. You know what I'm talking about? I think it's 2 witnesses. I didn't really look at that today. That He's going to have on the earth preaching. I didn't write that down today. We'll get more into that later. What was it, Matthew 24? I turn to Revelation 7. Talking about the announcement of the soon coming kingdom. Revelation 7. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just read this whole chapter. Try to read it pretty quick. Talking about the sayings of the tribulation period. We said the tribulation period is 7 years total. After these things, Revelation chapter 7, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Now here, those in Israel are going to be sealed. We know, I'm not going to read. I want to get down to verse number, well, I'll just read it all. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. So it's going to be 144,000. So you take 12 times 12, that's 144,000, right? Of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Reuben were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Gad were sealed 12,000. So 12,000, for time's sake here, I'm not going to read all of that. 12,000 each tribe are sealed. Okay, that's where the 144,000 comes in. Now I'll jump down to verse 9. After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands, and cried with a loud voice, saying, salvation to our God which sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. And all the angels stood round about the throne, and about the elders and the 4 beasts, and fell before the throne on their faces, and worshiped God, saying, amen, blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be unto our God forever and ever. Amen. Verse 13. And one of the elders answered, saying unto me, what are these which are arrayed in white robes? And whence came they? And I said unto him, sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, these are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore are they before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them, and shall lead them unto living fountains of waters. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. That's going to be a glorious day. Even if we don't understand it all, it's still going to be glorious whenever tears wiped away. So we see there's going to be a lot of people going to come out of the tribulation. That's what that says. Okay? So that can't be denied. Now I want to go back. I want to bring out a couple things called as we go forward. Understanding Daniel chapter 9 is very important. Now this 70th week of Daniel is known as the time of Jacob's trouble. That's another term for it. Okay? So Daniel chapter 9 is the vision of the 70 weeks. I want everybody to see that as much as I'm talking about this, I'm not just making this up. in Daniel chapter 9. So I want us to look at that somewhat close here before we go further in this other. Daniel chapter 9, vision of the 70 weeks. But instead of focusing on it and taking us so long to go through the whole chapter, the primary part that I want to look at is Daniel chapter 9, 20 through 27. Now the whole chapter is beneficial. Daniel chapter 9. So you have the vision of the 70 weeks. Let's read the first two verses. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of the Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years, whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. Now, starting in verse 3 through verse number 19, we have Daniel's prayer and confession. Then we get over here to Daniel 9, verse 20. We're going to see the 70 weeks of years. So these 70 weeks, every week represents 7 years. Starting in verse 20. And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin, so Daniel's confessing that he's got sin, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel. I thought that was interesting. That Daniel, the prophet, confessed that he has sin. Yeah. But yet God still used him. Amen. And that seem interesting to y'all? Yeah. And presenting my supplication before the Lord my God, for the holy mountain of my God, verse 21, yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, and he's got a man Gabriel coming to him here now in his condition. You know who Gabriel is? Everybody knows who that is. One of the archangels, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation, or the sacrifice, verse 22. And he informed me and talked with me, and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. Our understanding comes from the Lord, don't it? When we get it. Now, at the beginning, verse 23, of thy supplication, the commandment came forth, and I came to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision. Verse 24. 70 weeks. This is the main part of it. Starting in verse 24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people being Israel, and upon thy holy city being Jerusalem, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision of prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. Get these weeks here. 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So 7 weeks and 62 weeks, that's 62 weeks. So 62 weeks and 7 weeks make 69 weeks. This is where you got to really stay with it. How many weeks are we talking about total? 70. Talking about the 70 weeks. This is 69 of them, broken into 2 parts. 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Okay? The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. Verse 26. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. You know what that's talking about? Somebody's dead. The death of the Messiah. But not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and until the end of the war desolations are determined. Verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice of the oblation. This 1 week is that last week, the 70th week of Daniel, the time of Jacob's trouble. That's what we've been studying. Okay? Now, I'm going to go through, we're going to look at each verse. We're going to explain what some of it means. What we do know is clear about it. Some things might be as clear. Some things are clear. But one thing you got to understand, between the 69 weeks that come about and the 70th week is where we're at right now in God's timetable. This is the church age. Between the 69 weeks and the 70th week. That's one thing they didn't understand fully. A lot of people didn't understand. The apostles didn't understand that.
You're going to explain it?
Yeah, we're going to go over that. I'm just, before I go into it, we're going. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. We've been talking about the abomination of desolation that's going to happen in the middle of the tribulation. Right? We've been talking about that. That's in that last week. Now remember what I said, 70 weeks, each week is 7 years. Okay? That's what we're talking about. Now, you can figure this up and prove what I'm saying. I'm going to tell you how to do it. Okay? We're going to go through the verse on the time. But God didn't just, a lot of this is prophecy that has been fulfilled. That's how you know God keeps his promises. I think we would all agree on that he keeps his promises. He's kept them up until this day. And he's going to keep them in the future. Okay? Some of this that's already been fulfilled, or all of it that's already been fulfilled. Notice how he said in the first year of so-and-so king. That's so you can prove this stuff. That God, what he says, is true and faithful. So let's start going through a little of it. That's why it's so important that we go over this so we can have more of an understanding. I said more of understanding. I didn't say we're going to understand it all. I can't guarantee that a lot of this or all of this you are going to have to take on faith. Faith that God has kept his promises and he will keep his promises. If anything's wrong in our thinking, it's in us. It ain't in God. You know what I'm saying? I might not be rightly dividing something perfect. Okay? But a lot of it we can understand if we study.
You said we are currently in the 7th year?
No. We're not in the 70th. We get the tribulation.
Oh, okay.
We're not in. I
was confused.
Yeah, I said that we're in between the 69th week and the 70th.
Right now?
The 70th has not started. Because the rapture has not took place. All the tribulation has not
So
started.
we're in the 69?
We're between them. That's what, I'm going to explain that more. Okay. All right. So Daniel 9:24, let's just start right there. 70 weeks are determined, that's clear, upon thy people. Okay? That's why Matthew 24 and 25 is primarily prophetic, speaking of the tribulation, Matthew 24 and 25. So a lot of this, that 70th week that's going to be coming of Daniel, the time of Jacob's trouble, is primarily going to be dealing with Israel. Primarily. That don't mean it ain't going to affect some other people. So 70 weeks are determined, Daniel 9:24, upon thy people, meaning Israel, and upon thy holy city, meaning Jerusalem, to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins. What do you think that's talking about? I believe this refers to all of Israel's sins in the past, but it definitely refers to their rejection of the Messiah. That's what it referring to. It says to finish the transgression, basically unbelief about Christ. Unbelief about the Messiah. Yeah, is there other sin? But all sin is summed up in unbelief. But their biggest sin is unbelief about the Messiah. Right? And he's going to make that clear to them when he comes. When he comes the second time, there ain't going to be no saying it ain't who he is. You're going to bow your knee down. You're going to confess him with your tongue. Amen. So you can deny him right now. After his first time. People's denying him everywhere, right? But you ain't going to be able to deny him that day. He came humble the first time. Is he going to come humble the second time? No. He's coming in power and great glory. Nobody, they didn't have room for it in the end the first time, right? Wasn't no room in the end. Wasn't no place for him to lay his head. But when he comes this time, he's coming boldly. He's coming in power and great glory. You will not deny him and leave him. You'll be consumed. You can deny it, but you'll be consumed. So in 24 there, to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins. I wrote this down. This may refer to all Israel's sin. It definitely refers to rejection of the Messiah. But at his second coming, some will turn to him in faith. Okay. Next, and to make reconciliation for iniquity. To make reconciliation for iniquity. You know where that reconciliation was at? That reconciliation was at Calvary. But if you deny his birth, like many do, Jews and Gentiles, then you can't have that reconciliation. You can't have Christ dying on the cross and rising without his birth. Does that make sense? If you deny him, you deny him. Okay? Yep. So he says in verse 24, and to make reconciliation for iniquity. But some of this is future. It ain't all past. That's already been done, what he did at the cross, what he did at the resurrection. But some of this is still in the future because a lot of Israel is still in denial and a lot of the world. You notice how we read in Revelation, that what I read a while ago, that all the people's going to be saved, they're going to have their robes are going to be white. We read that a while ago in Revelation 7. There's going to be a lot of people that don't believe in him now. After that tribulation, they're going to believe in him. I can't explain how all that's going to come to that and tell you every detail, but Revelation 7 makes that clear. So a lot of people that don't believe him are going to believe in him. Still in verse 24. It's the finished work that makes the difference. As I said, a lot of this is still future. Because everybody then will know who the Messiah is. And they will trust in what he did at the cross. That's the only thing I'm going to say. Faith in him. To make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness. We're still in verse 4. This is what's being prophesied. He's going to do all these things. He's going to bring in everlasting righteousness. So this points forward to the second coming, to bring in everlasting righteousness. And it points to the millennial kingdom. There's going to be nothing but righteousness going on when he gets here. When he gets through dealing with everybody, and here's the big difference in it, it's going to lead on to the eternal state. Because from that point on, when he is here, and his second coming, and he does all this, You talked about the road we were reading about a while ago in Revelation 7. Then after that millennial kingdom's coming, we're going to forever be with the Lord. It's going to be eternal. He will be reigning in righteousness. And like I said a minute ago, there will be no denial of anything. He won't be coming humble like he did as a baby. He's coming bold. People will wail. People will want to die and not be able to die. Just one glimpse of him that sits on that horse. It is everlasting righteousness in the saints, as I already said, because it continues into the eternal state. And to seal up the vision, still in verse 24, to seal up the vision of prophecy. Guess what most of the Old Testament prophecy is focused on? The return of Christ. First, his coming, and then his return. Right? That's what it turned to Luke 1:33. So most or a lot of the Old Testament prophecies are focused on the return of Christ to the earth and his kingdom. Luke 1:33. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob for how long? Forever. He shall reign over the house of Jacob. You know who Jacob is? Jacob's name was changed to Israel, right? He shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. This is speaking of his second coming. Go back to verse 31. Luke 1:31. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shalt call his name Jesus. This speaks of his first coming. Luke 1:31 speaks of his first coming, and Luke 1:33 speaks of his second coming. And he shall be great, verse 32, and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Lord God shall give unto him the throne of his father David. See, that promise was made to David, that one of his descendants would always sit upon the throne. That was speaking of Jesus Christ. Back to Daniel 9. We're looking at the seal up the vision and prophecy. This prophecy here will be fulfilled at the end of the 70 weeks, when he comes back in power and great glory. Last part of verse 24, and to anoint the most holy. This is interesting here. At the beginning of the 1,000-year reign, the temple is described in Ezekiel 40 through 44. He's going to come back to that temple. He's going to, we're going to read the passage. Turn to Ezekiel 43. You know the temple is going to be built. That's what a lot of people, we mentioned that last week. Oh, everybody's always watching when that temple is going to be rebuilt. You know why? Because they know that that's showing the Messiah is coming back again. He's going to come back. As he left from the east, we talked about that last week, he's going to return back to the Mount of Olives, coming to the east, right? So, turn to Ezekiel 43. And if you read Ezekiel 40 through 44, you will see it describes the temple in there. The glory is going to come back to that temple because Jesus is going to come back there and he's going to anoint it or consecrate it. Let's look at Ezekiel 43. 1 through 5. This is a vision of the glory of the Lord filling the temple. Verse 1, Ezekiel 43:1. Afterward he brought me to the gate, even the gate that looketh toward the east. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel came from the way of the east. And his voice was like a noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory. Can you imagine that kind of glory that the whole earth would shine? That the earth would shine with his glory. And it was according to the appearance of the vision which I saw, even according to the vision that I saw when I came to destroy the city. And the visions were like the vision that I saw by the river Chabar, and I fell upon my face. And the glory of the Lord came into the house by the way of the gate, whose prospect is toward the east. The glory of the Lord came into the house. And the Spirit took me up and brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of the Lord filled the house. Go back to Daniel 9. This gets pretty interesting. Here, verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks. And we're talking about it in 70 weeks total. This is 7 of them. Shall be 7 weeks. Know therefore and understand that from the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, this was the decree, this here decree that Artaxerxes gave in 445 BC. Turn to Nehemiah 2.
Say that again?
Turn to Nehemiah chapter 2.
No, the part before that, I didn't hear.
That's read Daniel 9:25. Daniel 9:25. This is real important here, because this gives you the timeline. What this will do right here, this verse will show that God is faithful, that he does exactly what he said. This has already happened. Okay, this here. This is probably has already been fulfilled. Daniel 9:24. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah Prince, talking about Jesus, shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. All right, now, turn it, what did I say, Nehemiah, Ezra, Nehemiah 2, 1 through 8. This is when Artaxerxes sends Nehemiah to Jerusalem.
That's what I was asking. I didn't hear.
Nehemiah 2, 1 through 8. And it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of Artaxerxes, the king, that wine was before him. And I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Now I have not been before time sad in his presence. So he was sad. Verse 2. Everybody there, I'm going to wait a second. Verse 2, wherefore the king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad? Seeing thou art not sick. So he wanted to understand why he was sad. This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid. My understanding is, you ain't supposed to go before a king sad. You might be put to death. Verse 3, and said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad? When the city, the place of my fathers, what's he talking about there? Jerusalem, right? When the place of my father's sepulchre lies waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire. Verse 4, then the king said unto me, For what dost thou make request? So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant have found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. What we're talking about in Daniel 9:25. Know therefore and understand that from the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. That was a prophecy. This is how it come to pass. And we got the timeline, so we know God is faithful and true. If you look and study this, you're going to see it happened exactly like it was prophesied. And the king said unto me, talking about our taxes, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be? And when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come into Judah. And a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace, which appertain to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me according to the good hand of my God upon me. So this is what this is talking about in Daniel. So what we're establishing here is this is the 7 weeks. Then we're going to have 60 and 2 weeks. This gives you the timeline of when the Messiah will be born. Does that make sense? Go back to Daniel 9:25. Start back in verse 25. Know therefore and understand. So he wants us to have an understanding of this. But if we don't follow this timeline, we won't. It won't mean nothing to it. We'll just be word we read. You got to really look into this. History is wrote down. That's why he said when this king was ruling. This was 445 BC. 445 BC. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment, so who gave the commandment? Artaxerxes told him he could go do this, the king. Okay? To restore, he made the request though. Nehemiah did. Nehemiah the prophet. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the prince, shall be 7 weeks. How long did I say a week was? 7 years. 49 years. And 62 weeks. Then you got to add another 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall in a troublesome time. Let's go on down to verse. I want to get down there to verse 26. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. So this goes all the way to his death. We just looked at a period from when it was told to go and rebuild Jerusalem, and Artaxerxes gave him leave to do it. Okay, it tells us the year from when that was said until so that's 7 weeks and 62 weeks, so that's 490 years. Oh, 69. It ain't 69 times 7. Ain't that 490? No, 469. 469 is all the week. 469. Anyway, from whenever he told him to go do that until the verse 26, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. That's speaking of Christ's death. He's going to be cut off. So from the time he got the decree to go and rebuild Jerusalem until the time of the Messiah should be cut off, is 69 weeks. Then Jesus is put to death on the cross. He rises again. He ascends. Okay? Now we're in the church age. We're in that time between the end of the 69th week. 70th week is going to start when the tribulation starts. We're in a time now during the church age. Okay? Go a little further. What time is it?
10:30. 10:35.
So, definitely this till Messiah would be cut off. It's talking about the death of the Messiah. It says, but not for himself and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Wasn't the sanctuary destroyed later? Who knows when? 70 AD, right? So that happened too. Destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Let's see, I wrote down some things here. I'm going through all this. You better it's best to write down things and stuff can get complicated quick. There, for me it does, because I don't study this all the time. So to get the years right on what I said a while ago, verse 25, it says, here's what it actually says in verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forward of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks. 7 weeks is 49 years. I said each week is 7 years. 7 times 7 is 49 years, okay? And 62 weeks. That's 62 weeks. 60 and 2 more is 62. So that's a total of 434 years. That's what I got wrote down here.
434?
Yeah, if you add that up, make double check what I got.
On which verse? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just adding them together. You got 7 weeks, that's 49 years. And you got 62 weeks. 62 weeks is 62 weeks. 62 times 7 is 434, ain't it?
Yes.
Am I right? That number right? I thought I had it.
74.
The street shall be built again, the wall even in troublesome times. Verse 26, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself and the people of the prince that shall come, shall destroy the city and sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. Unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Not far, and I'm going to go on that part of that today. And we can stop there if y'all want to stop there, Dave. Somebody may have a question or comment. Like I said, a lot. Or we can go further. I'm more prepared. That was where I got in detail. I really want to go over that. To doing the overview of what I was talking about last week, what I really want to do, this just helps understand the timeline better. If you don't understand this, that all this is prophesied, these ain't just dates we're coming up with. This gives you the timeline when you read what our taxers told Nehemiah he could do. It tells you when it was. That's where you can start your timeline. In the first, didn't it say the first year? I had that wrote down now. Nehemiah 2, 1 through 8. It gave us the timeline. That ain't just something arbitrary.
Jeremiah also gave us a timeline.
Yeah.
70 years.
Well, you got something else I noticed in this, going through this time. That word 70 is a big Bible word. There's 70 years of captivity, and there's 70 weeks that God gave that vision to Daniel. 70 weeks, each week being 7 years. There's that number 7 again. 70, and then you got 7. I mean, it's all through the Bible. So, yeah, it was, this decree of Artaxerxes, it was in 445 BC in Nehemiah. You look that up and study it, that's what year you're going to see he gave it. Nehemiah again. It came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king. That would be, you look at it, you're going to study that. It's going to be 445 BC. So then you can figure this up, these weeks, until when the Messiah was born. Or till he was cut off. Not his point that he was cut off. Okay. So, anyway, let me see. So far as the overview, prophetic overview, we didn't get very far in that. What we looked at more today, we need to know this because the 70th week of Daniel, the time of Jacob's trouble, is during the tribulation. That week has not started yet, the way I understand it. Now, if you think we're already in the tribulation, there are people probably believe that somewhere. But based on what we've been reading in Matthew 24 and 25 and other places, this is not tribulation. I don't call it tribulation. It's definitely, if you do claim it's tribulation, it's definitely not like what we read in Revelation 7, where you can't buy or sell unless you got the mark. So it definitely ain't great tribulation, and the Antichrist has not been revealed. Yeah, there are many Antichrists in the world today, but not the Antichrist. That's another thing you got to be careful about. A lot of people start talking about the Antichrist, they talking about the many Antichrist. I'm talking about the Antichrist. The one that's going to set himself up in the temple and say, I'm God, worship me, or either worship my beast.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about, the Antichrist. So we know we're definitely not in the Great Tribulation. It's going to be a time that says never been up until that time. We ain't nowhere near that right now. And we might be far away from what we think. So anyway, when we pick back up next week, and you know, you got to study this for yourself. You don't need to just take this call Kendall Bible saying it. Do that, but I don't claim to be no expert on it. But I think this will get you to looking and studying more if you're interested in it, which I think you need to be interested in. I do believe everything I share with you that I can back it up. I can show you. But some of this stuff, it take a while to show if I went into every detail. You know what I'm saying? We're going to probably need to get out on the table. We're going to have some more books. But we got to look at these timelines. See, in Nehemiah 2, 1 through 8, you got to establish when that 445 BC is. It is in that year. Then you can figure to when the Messiah was cut off. I mean, scholars have been doing this. This is pretty well what that and Daniel is pretty well agreed on by most people. I don't think you're going to find much disagreement on that part of it. Where are you going to find the disagreement? I'm talking about up until the prophecy that's already been fulfilled. Because we got the timeline. We got when this person was king. See what I'm saying? Where you're going to find the disagreement starts is on the prophecy that has not been fulfilled. See, we can still speculate on that. But what's already been fulfilled, like where the Messiah was going to be born, how he would be betrayed. That's all.
They
were witnesses. There were witnesses to it. There were timelines, okay? That makes sense.
That's why they laid out the bombs as he walked around the donkey.
So, what we're going to get into next week, now if y'all ain't, we'll talk about this, we won't do it right now, but we'll go in our discussion. If y'all ain't interested in this, I can teach on something else. If y'all ain't interested in this, if y'all are interested, I think it's a good thing that we do study, even if we don't 100% agree on every detail. I feel like it's a good thing. We need to be studying it more. Because even if you disagree with the way exactly every detail I'm teaching, then at least you can go look on what do you agree on? What do you believe? See what I'm saying? So that's the good part of it. This, as I said last week, is not a salvational issue to me. the main thing is I know we've talked about it before, it will pan out. Your doctrine will pan out if you got oil in anything. Right? If you really say, if you mess up on this and you really say, you will make it. Right? That's what you really need to know. But it is good to know details, right? How we get you from one place to the other. That's what we're talking about. We know that Christ is going to transport us when we get to heaven, right? We just all that in between. When it's going to take place, exactly how it's going to take place. Right. That's what we're talking about. So I hope everybody understands that. But next week we will pick up and I will move on into some more. I may finish Daniel 9 and get all the way explaining all that. Now there are some things that a few of these little things I mentioned, we're getting on down in the end of verse 26, 27, Daniel 9, that I don't hear many people even discussing. There are some details in this, trying to understand that timeline, and everything that was said. Most of it is pretty clear for what I went over today. Because that's already past prophecy. Them 69 weeks, because the Messiah has been cut off. He has died on the cross. Then he rose again and ascended. But we're in the church age. That's what I'm saying. Y'all consider that, look at yourself, that there is a time lapse, there is a amount of time in this dispensation of grace. There, between the 69th week that Daniel prophesied and the 70th week is the church age. That is something that the Old Testament people and even the apostles did not understand fully. Do we understand it fully? Even though we got the Bible? No. So don't get too hard on them. But it's happening though. Right? They couldn't even understand it. And he kept telling them that I'm fixing to die. Talking about his temple. Not the building. Right? So, I mean, sometimes things we look at us right in the face and we may not understand it. God is the one who gives understanding. I mean, think about all in the Old Testament, when Daniel, when these kings would have these visions, and somebody had to go tell them what it meant. Right? I mean, they want to kill people. It would so bother them, they couldn't understand what's this vision, what's it mean? That they gonna put people to death. Somebody don't tell them. A king had a lot of power and authority to do this. So we will pick up next week. We're going to go further. We looked at the announcement of the soon coming kingdom today, and then I went back to Daniel 9. We're going to be looking next week that there will be worldwide persecution of those who refuse to follow the Antichrist. It will be worldwide. There will be terrible supernatural judgments. Great armies will march and fight. Fearful demonic forces will be unleashed. The nation of Israel will turn to the Lord Jesus Christ. Okay? And then it's going to be a lot more. There's some things to be thinking about. All right.
You said great flood? You said it was a great flood?